On April 14th, Blue Origin successfully completed its 11th space tourist flight. The flight, call-signed New Shepard 31, reached low orbit, 62 miles into space, and lasted 10 minutes, 21 seconds before touching back down in the wilds of West Texas. For comparison, the New Shepard 31 mission was 5 minutes shorter and 50 miles lower max altitude-wise than the first NASA manned mission, Alan Shepard's Freedom 7 flight that took place on May 5, 1961. The all-female crew of 6 included singer Katy Perry, morning show host and Oprah Winfrey bestie Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez, who's the fiancée of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon and Blue Origin. Bezos was on the ground in Texas to greet Sanchez and the rest of the Shepard 31 crew when they exited the capsule, and this unfortunate faceplant before they got out was widely shared on social media. Blue Origin won't say how much it charges people to be part of the crew, but the cost is reportedly anywhere between $1 million to $28 million. The company has confirmed that a $150,000 deposit is required to reserve a seat. Celebrities who have flown on Blue Origin include NFL Hall of Famer Michael Strahan and William Shatner, who of course played Captain Kirk on the TV and movie series Star Trek. New Shepard 31's short trip was technically the first all-female spaceflight since Russian Valentina Teresh-kova's solo mission in 1963. But there were a number of highly qualified American female pilots that could have been first in space had attitudes been different at the time. I'm usually sporting a short beard, but I still shave around my cheeks and neck, and like all of you out there who shave, I want a razor that's designed to prevent nicks, cuts, and irritation. So here's a secret that goes against what the shaving industry has been trying to sell you for the last few decades. You don't need a razor with up to half a dozen blades, you just need one with a single really good blade. And to get that good blade, I don't want an annoying subscription service. Just get me what I need for a great shave and then leave me alone. So meet the sponsor of this episode, Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace manufacturer that has made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover. Now they are bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. You see, the folks at Henson Shaving realize that a bad shaving experience isn't as much a function of how sharp the blade is, but rather because of how much it wobbles. Think of your razor as a diving board. The longer the board, the more it wobbles. A razor's micro wobbles are what lead to more nicks and cuts. Henson solves this by minimizing blade extension, addressing the root cause of bad shaves, not the blade itself, but the extension. Henson's aerospace background allows them to create a razor that offers a vibration-free and incredibly close shave. Visit hensonshaving.com/ward to pick the razor for you and use the code WARD, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/ward and use the code WARD. The little-known history of the group, now referred to as the Mercury 13, starts with Dr. Randy Lovelace, a Harvard-educated flight surgeon with the U.S. Army who became a pioneer in aeromedicine and aviation physiology, particularly with the issues surrounding high-altitude flight. In 1940, Lovelace met Jackie Cochran, a record-holding female air racer who petitioned First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt to use women as pilots on the home front in a variety of non-combat missions. That idea turned into the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, better known as WASPs, during World War II. These female aviators served in crucial roles, test pilots, ferry pilots, and maintenance check pilots that freed up additional male pilots to fight the battles that were raging across the globe. A few years later, Cochran, by virtue of her friendship with Chuck Yeager, became the first woman to break the sound barrier. After that, she became the first woman to land an airplane on an aircraft carrier. So when NASA began fielding candidates for what would eventually become the Mercury 7 astronauts, Lovelace and Cochran started a privately funded parallel effort that mirrored NASA's rigorous testing, which was doable because Lovelace was a key player in designing the official program for the space agency. Along the way, they asked another record-breaking female aviator, Jerry Cobb, to join the effort. The three of them combed the veteran WASP population, a community of over 700 pilots, and came up with 13 qualified females willing and able to go through their NASA-like testing. The astronaut candidates' age range was from 23 to 41 years old, and the group also included twins, Janet and Marion Dietrich. Cobb dubbed the group Fellow Lady Astronaut Trainees, or FLATs. The 13 went through a series of stressful evaluations designed to see if they could hold up under the conditions in space. Ice water was injected into their ears to induce vertigo. Painful electric shocks were administered to test reflexes. weighted stationary bicycles were used to rapidly push candidates to exhaustion. All 13 of the women passed Phase 1, but because of various commitments, only 3 of them, Jerry Cobb, Rhea Hurley, and Wally Funk, were able to travel to Oklahoma City for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved psychological evaluations, including one that had them sit in an isolation tank for an extended period. All 3 women passed. After Jerry Cobb passed all of Phase 3, which included actual flights in military jet aircraft, the rest of the flats were invited to follow suit. But before they could gather at the designated location of Naval Air Station Pensacola, U.S. Navy officials at the base sent a telegram to the candidates informing them that support for the project had been withdrawn because the request hadn't come through NASA channels. Jerry Cobb was furious with the Navy's decision, and she flew to Washington to petition lawmakers to make the FLATS program an official part of NASA. Her efforts led to New York Representative Victor Anfuso convening public hearings before a special subcommittee of the House Committee on Science and Astronautics. Jerry Cobb's testimony in 1962 added the issue of gender discrimination into the Hills conversation a few years before the Civil Rights Act made it illegal. But the flats' future was plagued by infighting more than unresponsive lawmakers. Jackie Cochran, of all people, testified that setting up a special program to help women would hurt NASA because of the budget required and the fact that, quote, you'd lose women to marriage, end quote. Cochran's negative view was multiplied by the opinions of a handful of Mercury 7 astronauts, including John Glenn, who said that the absence of women in the program was, quote, a fact of our social order, end quote. Glenn also pointed out that astronaut candidates were required to be graduates of one of the military's test pilot schools, something women were not qualified to apply for in 1962, and NASA had already indicated that it had no desire to waive the requirement by giving females credit for the massive amount of flight experience they had, in some cases many more hours than the Mercury 7 astronauts. Although some in Congress seemed sympathetic to the Flats' situation, Cobb's Capitol Hill visit ultimately didn't result in any meaningful support. After Soviet cosmonaut Teresh-kova became the first woman in space on June 16, 1963, Life magazine published an article criticizing NASA and American decision-makers. The article included photographs of all 13 flats, which made the entire group of women public for the first time. When the press corps asked American astronauts about the Russians putting a woman in space and whether there was any room for females in NASA's program, Gordon Cooper said, quote, we could have put a woman up on the second orbital instead of the chimpanzee, end quote, which got a big laugh. Years later, Jackie Cochran admitted she regretted her congressional testimony and was embarrassed by it. Some space historians believe she testified because if the program had succeeded, she would no longer have been the most prominent female aviator. As Randy Lovelace's daughter put it, quote, Jackie was a champion of Jackie, end quote. The official cancellation of any government-funded female astronaut programs by President Johnson was the final blow to the female astronaut candidate pool at the time. But in several cases, Mercury 13 alums channeled their disappointment into the motivation to launch nationwide women's rights programs. NASA did not select any female astronaut candidates until 1978. Astronaut Sally Ride became the first American woman in space in 1983, and in 1995, Eileen Collins was the first woman to pilot the space shuttle. At Collins' invitation, 7 of the surviving flats attended her launch. Wally Funk is now the only surviving member of the Mercury 13. On July 20th, 2021, she flew on the Blue Origin and became the oldest person to go into space at 82 years old, besting the record previously held by the 77-year-old John Glenn. All right, that'll do it for this episode. For more on this topic, check out the Mercury 13 documentary streaming on Netflix. And this channel is powered by subscribers, so if you aren't one already, please consider becoming one so you don't miss anything going forward. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.